I like Dragon Ball as much as the next guy. It's one of the series that completely changed my life. At such a young age, I became obsessed with the series, and to this day, I keep up with anything Dragon Ball related. One thing you may or may not know about me is I'm a bit of a gamer. In fact, the earliest gaming memory I have is from Dragon Ball Z Budokai on GameCube. But all that to say, I'm a pretty big fan of Dragon Ball Z and will always be excited for any new Dragon Ball content. But on the opposite end, something I don't like about the Dragon Ball series is the fans. And the reason why is because they have the tendency to not shut up about a certain game called Dragon Ball Tenkaichi 3. I've never played this game before, and honestly, I never want to. So, when the so-called free thinkers hear you say anything remotely bad about the game they grew up with, or the series they hold on a very, very high pedestal, it gets a bit dark. So let's get this out of the way now. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero isn't perfect. And I know, this game was anticipated for so long and it's part of the Tenkaichi series, which everyone grew up with, besides me apparently, but I am a firm believer that nothing is exempt from criticism. Just because you like something and think it's amazing, that doesn't mean you should stop liking it because the YouTuber said something mean about the little gamey wing.
Why are you crying?
Also, this is not a personal attack. You didn't personally make this game. How you feel about the game is just as valid as how I feel about the game. So if genuine criticism makes you mad, do me a favor, take a step outside. But before we talk about the game, lend me your energy and hit the subscribe button. And if you want a whole different universe worth of content, check out the second channel where we do a bunch of fun stuff over there too. Okay? I know what you guys are here for. Okay, so Sparking Zero was announced in March of 2023, and the build up for the game was absolutely positive. I knew that people really liked the Tenkaichi series, but you would have thought world peace was solved. Personally, I wasn't too excited because again, I had no idea that these games existed. Every now and then, they would release a new trailer for the game up until the release, and I felt like the fanbase grew even more hype when they saw a new character or new game mechanic revealed. I think towards the end of September is when I started actually getting excited to see the game, but the game was finally released on October 10th. And for the next couple of days, I could not escape that game. Everybody on my For You page was playing it. Luckily, where the game is now after the first patch, it kinda died down pretty reasonably. But let's finally get in and see what this highly anticipated game has to offer. Right when we load into the game, we're greeted with a pretty interactive menu. It shows a bunch of different locations in the series, and Goku has to travel from each place where he sees a bunch of his friends and family. I'm not the hugest fan of this menu personally, but everything is pretty intuitive, so I'm not going to complain about it. But I'm actually going to start by talking about the visuals of the game since we're on the topic. I think that most Dragon Ball games are pretty stylistic, and most of them, especially in recent time, have their own aesthetic. Fighters doesn't look like Xenoverse, and Xenoverse doesn't look like Kakarot. I'm not gonna lie to you all, this game has some highs, but the lows are kinda disappointing. I think my gripes mainly come from the animations that aren't from the ultimates, character intros, or the special actions or attacks. I know this is a really small portion of the animations in total, because like I said, when the game looks good, it looks good.
I'm about to bust.
This is by far one of the best looking Dragon Ball games, and I understand if you bought the game solely off of how it looks. And I think seeing the trailers is one thing, but then actually seeing them in person was probably one of the coolest experiences I've had with the game. Loading into your first match is like, oh, okay, but then you start playing it and it's like, yo, I get it. But I do think the small amount of rotoscoped animations does put a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. If I had to guess, the story mode and the menus were the very last things in development, and also the rotoscoping just doesn't fit the game at all. I think that the realistic movements are so weird in any anime game. This isn't just a Dragon Ball exclusive problem. I'd rather stiff anime movements over the loose flowy rotoscoping. I would say that this game has the highest peak, but it's the most inconsistent. I don't think inconsistent is the right word for that, but I hope you guys can understand. I think Kakarot is the most consistent Dragon Ball game across the board when it comes to animations. I can barely remember anything looking wonky, but at the same time, I played the game like 3 years ago. Sparking Zero is much flashier, but at the same time, those little things just bring it down ever so slightly. The most you see it in is story mode, and let's talk a little about that since we're on it. It's fine. Okay, I didn't have the patience to go through and complete every single story, but I won't lie, the Vegeta ape It's hard. It is. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would never lie to y'all. And it's not hard because I'm bad at the game. I'm pretty cracked. But it's just a cheesy ass bot, dude. Like, I really don't care to finish it, especially with how much I don't care about this rendition of the Dragon Ball story. And I'm not even gonna lie, I'm kind of tired of the Dragon Ball story in general. Like, don't get me wrong, it's iconic, but I know the story like the back of my hand at this point in my life. But most Dragon Ball games have covered all of the Dragon Ball timeline up until the Buu Saga, and more recently, the Battle of Gods and Resurrection F movie. But let me put this into perspective. Battle of Gods is 10 years old. Yes, 10. Dragon Ball Super is also nearly 10 years old. So I think the Dragon Ball story is a bit overused as a conventional story mode. When the game's story is advertised as relive the Dragon Ball moments, I'm like, okay, I'll do it again for the 8th time this month. Give me a damn break, dude. Oh my gosh. I think that Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2 have had the most innovative story modes that we've gotten in a while. Putting you in the middle of the story and trying to fix events, throwing in different possibilities that could have been explored in the show. From what I'm told, this game does have like what if scenarios, but at the same time, I feel like making what if scenarios for every game kind of ruins the novelty of it. Like, Xenoverse was basically, what if Goku drank Prime, but he's evil! Goku's evil! And I think that's okay if it's the main gimmick, but when it feels like we're getting what if scenarios put into every game, it doesn't feel cool anymore. The Budokai game I played a month ago had what if scenarios. That game came out in 2002. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse because I didn't kill the horse myself, but I'm not gonna dock any points from the game because of the story, because that's not what people came for. People came back for the oh so delicious Tenkaichi controls. And from what the streets are saying, the controls are nearly identical to the most recent entry. Again, I've never played this game, so I don't know. So don't hate me because I'm new gen. But these controls make me feel confused. I'm gonna run through them right now, just off the dome. This is me just remembering the controls, right? So basic attack combo is X, key blast plus combo extender is Y, counter is B, A is jump of course, cause why wouldn't it be? RB and X is grab, pretty standard. Right stick is I think revenge counter. And I think this is like the equivalent to like the right stick in Xenoverse. And RT is your special move menu. And I think that's it. Now the controls are pretty simple, but the mechanics are what makes this game, in my opinion, very hard to pick up. And I think the reason why is because these mechanics have multiple buttons that do multiple things. For example, the Z vanish and the block are the same button. It's not a huge deal, but I find myself just spamming the block button, hoping that one of two things happen. I vanish behind my opponent, or I actually get to block the combo. And the timing is so tight. I think that you should be rewarded for doing a perfect block, but at the same time, the timing feels very different each time. Like, call me ass, okay fine, but it feels like I'm way too early or way too late, and it never registers. But then I play Fortnite Festival, and I'm really good at Fortnite Festival. I get perfect a lot, so my timing is consistent. It's not me. Another control that I dislike a lot is the counter button. I think it's redundant. In my head, blocking and countering are very similar. I think that one should be a result of the other. For example, you should be able to just block an enemy's attack just from holding a button. But if you block an attack as soon as it lands, you should be rewarded with either a perfect block or in this case, a Sonic Sway. I feel like there are way too many defensive options, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like the offensive options are way more limited, and it makes playing feel kinda lopsided. So offense in the game feels a bit restricted, or at least not in depth as the defensive options in the game. I'm sure it's because I'm using the same characters, but it doesn't feel like there's a ton of variety when it comes to combos. I know that's where you kind of get creative and learn the game on your own, but at the same time, it feels like there are too many ideas, but not enough buttons. Charging key in your special menu is the exact same input. Your combo extender and key blast are the same thing. It feels too complex for the sake of preservation. Like, people knew how much they wanted the next Tenkaichi game to be exactly like the one they played when they were 10, but maybe they didn't realize how dated these controls were in the first place. When playing games, I get the best experience when the controls are streamlined. I'm not saying the controls have to be super simple in the game, but I shouldn't need a college degree playing Sparking Zero. Every time I load into the game, it feels like I have to relearn it from the ground up because there's so much to remember. so many clashes, so many animations, so in the end, it just feels overwhelming, especially with how fast paced the game is. That's another thing I don't like. The game is super duper fast paced. Like faster than Xenoverse, faster than Fighters, and most modern Dragon Ball releases. And when I say fast paced, I mean more the inputs. Like I said, the timing feels super tight for some things, so it feels like both players are just spamming whatever buttons hoping for the best. I don't want to come off as just complaining though, because this game isn't all bad. I think that the game is genuinely fun. I don't mind trying to learn the game because when it starts to click, you feel super cool, especially with the character you like. It just all makes a ton of sense. Also, the roster is very large, and admittedly, there are a ton of repeats, of course for padding. Like Super Saiyan 3 Goku is his own character, so is early Z Goku, but I'm not even going to complain about the roster spots because the sheer volume of the characters is just amazing. Like they have canon Bardock and non-canon Bardock. We clearly know which one is better, but I see people complain about missing characters. The main one is like Super 17, and it's like, relax. How often are you really going to play as them? There is DLC on the way, and I think most of it should have been in the game already outside of the Diamond characters. But honestly, if no DLC was announced, I think I'd be pretty satisfied with the roster. I didn't talk about the roster balancing because I'm a little mixed on it. On one hand, it makes sense that different characters have different amounts of health, because Cybermen shouldn't have the same amount of health as UI Goku. But when it comes to the online, the workaround is DP battles, and I'm not a huge fan of this. I don't like being this limited in DP battles. It does force you to make creative teams that only use a small amount of DP, or it forces you to get good with 2 or 3 high DP characters. I think that for any ranked fighting game, there should be constants that every game should follow. For example, the amount of characters, the amount of health, the damage. What's stopping people who use Gogeta and Vegito online? You think they aren't going to give themselves the best chance of winning? No, most people are going to pick the meta OP characters way before they pick their favorite character that maybe isn't meta. I heard from a TikTok that the Tenkaichi series could be described as a party game. Like this game series never had a ranked mode in mind, so now that it's included in a modern release, the original vision doesn't quite fit the conventions of competitive gaming. I'm not saying that online is bad, what I'm saying is I'd rather have a much more balanced experience. Like I shouldn't feel guilty loading up with Gogeta Blue. I just think he's cool. I'm not playing him because he's OP, he's just the coolest character in the game. And I think that's it for the positives. And I'm not saying that to be negative or anything, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of game when you look at it. The story seems pretty lackluster. There are tournament modes and online play of course. The online experience actually was pretty decent. I went from D5 to C5 in about an hour. I'm not sure if it was because I was using Gogeta, but most of the fights I had were pretty balanced. Besides Bardock, he fucking cheesed me, dude. Oh my gosh. I do have some minor nitpicks, but if I say most of them, Dragon Ball fans will throw their fits. Yeah, don't mess with us, Dragon Ball fans. The collective IQ of the community is about a 7. I think the main gripe that I have is about the amount of content in the game. There's no Xenoverse or Kakarot level of story, and it seems like they just want you to play the game online, which isn't the hugest issue, but that's pretty much it. I don't really care to go over the extra modes like the Encyclopedia or the Shenron, because it's just a bunch of fan service and busy work. Another thing that people love about this game that I'm not particularly fond of is the fan service in general, especially when it's right in your face. Like, here you go, little baby, eat your applesauce. Again, I'm not going to dock points for it, but people are seeing the same fan service moments in each game, and then they soy face at it every single time. Like, a team full of Goku lookalikes are going to say, hey, you guys look exactly like me, and people will love it every single time. Oh my gosh. But then the one I do like is like with the mini Gokus and Goten, and he's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. That's so cute. The game feels like there's a lot of content, but honestly, I think you can finish it in a weekend. And I'm not knocking the game for that. It doesn't need to overstay its welcome, but I think that is something most fans don't care about. Most of the people who bought this game have been Dragon Ball fans for years. The series is one of the most popular on the planet, and I'm not even talking about anime at this point. Dragon Ball is truly a global phenomenon. But as cherished as this series may be, we have to call out bullshit when we see it, guys. Come on. We can't just ignore it because we like something so much. Is Sparking Zero the perfect Dragon Ball game? No. Is it a really fun game that is a great addition to the already amazing game series? Yes, absolutely. Sparking Zero is not a bad game by far. It's honestly one of the better Dragon Ball games that I've played in a long time. I do think that the flaws I did mention are valid, but at the end of the day, they do not make the game terrible or broken. I think that you can point to a lot of stuff in Xenoverse and say, oh, that meta is broken, or this just overall is really janky, which I think is a huge plus for Sparking Zero. I spent a lot more time playing the game, and I can actually say that this game is definitely worth the wait. I won't lie, I came into this video expecting to rip it apart in the nicest way possible, but it ended up really surprising me. In the middle of matches, I'd yell out, I'm actually having fun! And at the end of the day, Bandai knows how to make a decent Dragon Ball game. They've been doing it for years. Is this the best Dragon Ball game? No. For me, it'll always be Kakarot. But I can definitely say that this is a close second. But damn, you will not catch me in that story mode!